Hi, my name is Anaislaure. Welcome or welcome back to my channel if you don't know me. Here I like to talk about all things books, literature, reading, writing, all things in the English realm. So today I'm in a different setting. I'm in my room at home, glad to be home. I finished college like beginning of May, thank God. I did finish well, even though it literally almost killed me. But we're not going to talk about that. Today we're going to talk about books. So I would like to go over my May report and the books that I've bought and read for the month of May. I've had a lot of great purchases and a lot of amazing reads, so I'm really excited to share that with you today. In total, I have bought 16 books and 6 of them I've read. So we're going to get into that today. Hopefully this video won't take too long. If you like seeing my face and you like talking with me about books, make sure to subscribe if you like, no pressure. Anyways, all right, let's get into it. So let me try to reorganize these in a way that makes sense. So my first read for the month of May was the book We Are Not Like Them by Christine Pride and Joe Piazza. Let me read you the blurb real quick so you get an idea. Jen and Riley have been best friends since kindergarten. As adults, they remain as close as sisters, but the deep bond they share is severely tested when Jen's husband, a city police officer, is involved in the shooting of an unarmed black teenager. 6 months pregnant, Jen is in freefall as her future, her husband's freedom, and her friendship with Riley are thrown into uncertainty. As the television journalist covering the story, Riley wrestles with the implications of this tragic incident for her black community, her ambitions, and her relationship with her lifelong friend. This sounds really interesting. This sounds like a read that is essential to understand what's going on in the world right now when it comes to political uproar about racial issues and tension in this country, but it fell very flat. Everything was extremely surface level in this book. It didn't get to any deep-rooted core issues that are in America that have to do with the black community. Skimmed over like the surface of racism and discrimination and prejudice. The characters are extremely unlikable as well, which is kind of disappointing. Jen is a white woman, and then Riley is a black woman, and the story is told from both of their point of views. I would have liked for Jen to be more likable so that we could empathize with her, and not so much likable, but I just wanted to empathize with her character, and that's what I was expecting coming into the book because it's also told from her point of view. So I was like, oh, I'll get to see the white woman's side of this. As a black woman, I'll be able to see that. She was very selfish, very self-centered, very annoying. Her character was just completely unlikable, and I think that also added to the story not being great. I would have loved for this to be a novel that just bridged the gap between white people and black people for us to be able to see our differences, but it did not do that. And this book is rated 4 stars, which is actually bizarre. I read a Goodreads comment on this book, and this woman, Lindsay, had said that the 5-star ratings on this book are probably white women that are at the beginning of their racial identity journey. Truer words have never been said, Lindsay. It just placated white women. That's what it did. And I'm someone that does not like that kind of narrative. I study racial theory. I'm pretty well versed in topics like this. Not as much as I'd like to be because there's so much more information out there that I haven't even skimmed the surface of, but this was not it. This was like baby. So I rated it 2 stars. I wouldn't recommend it. Second book that I read for the month of May was Sula by Toni Morrison. I was blown away completely by this narrative. Toni Morrison's prose, her imagery, her description. Oh my God, her description and like her backstory and her fill-ins are just amazing. She also didn't have like too much dialogue in a story as someone would expect in a fiction story, but the dialogue was just perfect, even though there wasn't much. Every sentence, every word was essential to the narrative and just built on what was already there. The story is about 2 girls, Nellie and Sula, who are growing up together and becoming women in the black community. And they're basically going through life as black women and trying to figure out how they want to place themselves in their community. Nellie is a character that kind of conforms to the way that people believe black women should be in the family, as wives, as mothers, as sisters, and so forth. And then Sula is a character that challenges that completely and just gets out of the box, does not want anything to do with the box. I thought this was so influential, so amazing. I resonated with it so much, and I completely recommend it to any Black woman or women in general. I think this is an essential novel that needs to be read by every woman and people that aren't even women, to just understand the plight of a Black woman. It was just chef's kiss. I loved it. I rated it a 4.5, only because in the beginning I was a little confused, but I feel upon second reading of this novel, I will rate it a 5 stars, because this, nothing missed on this, nothing missed, and Toni Morrison is that girl. So the third book that I read was Milk Fed by Melissa Broder. Y'all, okay. So this is a story about a woman named Rachel who basically has a bunch of issues with eating. As she was growing up, her mother was extremely fat phobic and tried to restrict her from eating certain things because she didn't want her to grow fat. And when she did, she would tear her down and her self-image. As a child, Rachel ended up developing an eating disorder, and she had to see a nutritionist for it. And then they created a plan where she would count her calorie intake and have to stick to that diet and that regimen. But this counting of calories went into her adult life, and now she's just so analytical and over obsessive over her caloric intake, to the point where she restricts herself from eating, and eating is just a ritual to her. It's something that she does not enjoy at all. And this book just revolves around the problems that a lot of people have with eating. Something I liked about this book was that it kind of made me realize, wait, why does everyone have a bad relationship with food? Something that is so essential to all of us, that we need. No one's relationship with food is perfect, which is really interesting. And it obviously has a lot to do with body image standards that we place in society. So I liked that aspect of the book, and I also liked the mommy issues that were talked about in the book and the toxicity within a mother and daughter relationship. Rachel is also Jewish, and she's discovering her sexuality with this woman she meets who is named Miriam, and Miriam opens her up into the world of eating. Regardless of all of this intersectionality, which is the reason I picked up the book, it was horrible. It was truly bad. It was just bad. The writing was poor. The sexual fantasies that Rachel had in this book and the way she would think about sex and describe it in her mind was just disgusting. There are so many instances of her fetishizing Miriam for her fatness, and it was just distasteful. I didn't like it. There are ways to go about things like that, and she just did not do it well. It was like trying to be a book where, oh, I'm saying all the things everyone's thinking, but it's like, girl, no one's thinking that. No one that's in their right mind is thinking the things that Rachel was thinking. There was a scene where Rachel and Miriam were doing things with each other, and then Rachel fantasizes about wanting to eat her feces. So I rated this book a 1 star. It was just, if you're gonna do all of that, maybe at least make the writing good. The writing was just so bad. I'm not gonna read another Melissa Broder book. I'm sorry. This was just, I don't want to put myself through something like that again. And the next book I read was Stoner by John Williams. I loved this book with my whole entire heart. It was amazing. It's just a simple novel, really. It's about a man who is an English professor and is just going through his life. It's a simple life, but there's so much embedded in the simplicity. It's a must read. I think it's a classic too. I'm not entirely sure. But John Williams' prose is just top notch. Like he knows what he's doing, and the way he just explains things, you truly feel for Stoner. You understand him as a character, you resonate with him, and the lack of love and affection that he has in his life and how he yearns for it and fights for it, but it's never truly there. He never fully gets it. And just like all the things that he thinks and like his mind, his relationships. I loved this book so much. I rated it 5 stars. So yeah, that was Stoner. I loved it. My next read, it was The Love Letters of Virginia Woolf and Vita Sackville-West. So if you don't know, Virginia Woolf is a essential classic writer that everyone kind of knows of. She's like up there. She's up there. And then Vita Sackville-West is not nearly as known as Virginia. She's also a writer and a poet that was around the 1900s, just like Virginia. This book is a collection of the love letters that were sent between the two writers over the span of 1 year short of 2 decades. We were taken from the beginning of their friendship when they first meet each other all the way up until Virginia's death. This book was filled with deep affection and love, with desperation, with jealousy. It was just so good. They truly loved each other. They were truly meant for each other. I don't care what you say. I don't care. I don't want to hear anything about it. Virginia and Vita should have been together. Period. I loved reading this so much, and I was completely torn at the end. It was just a lot. It was a lot. So yeah, I recommend this to any queer sapphic woman. It's a must read, and this bad boy's annotated. So yeah, get it. It's And then my last read of May, unfortunately, was Assembly by Natasha Brown. This is a very short novel. It's about a Black woman who is based in London, and she's basically having to navigate her life as a Black woman through a colonized country, a country that thrived and still thrives off of white supremacy. I will admit that this book was a bit hard for me to understand in the beginning. There were just like a lot of jumps and like short clips, and which was like kind of like, okay, what's going on here? But towards the end, it felt really cleaned up, and I was able to completely understand the narrative. It had so much to say about what colonization has done to the Black community and Black women specifically, and how it has formed their view of themselves and their view to other people, to white people. It also talked a lot about white spectatorship, and that's a topic that no one ever really talks about. While it did revolve around colonization, it was more about the experience of a singular Black woman and how that relates to the experience of many Black women in England, in America, just in colonized spaces. And I loved it entirely, so I rated this a 4. Now that we got the books I read out of the way, these are the books that I bought. These are the books that I bought. So in no particular order, we're just gonna go through it. Emma by Jane Austen. I haven't read any Jane Austen, but I do want to get into her because it's Jane Austen. She's a classic writer, and I think it would be kind of essential to start reading Jane Austen, you know, as an English major. Then literally yesterday, I got these 2 books, Writers and Lovers by Lily King and Bonjour, Tristesse by Francoise Sagan. I'm traveling to France in like 2 days, so I thought I should get some books for the trip. I felt like this would be like a really fun read to just walk around France with and pick up a coffee shop, you know the vibes. And then Bonjour, Tristesse, I mean, that's France, come on. Like, it makes sense. Then another book, Hood Feminism. I am so excited to read this. I actually did a lot of studying and even wrote a whole paper on the intersectionality of Black women and how they do not fit into white feminism in this country. And I love that this book talks about that. So I'm so excited to read this. I'm definitely gonna read it when I get back from my trip. And just based off of the topics that I know it covers, I think this will be an essential read for any woman that calls herself a feminist. Personally, I identify as a womanist and not a feminist because feminism just revolves around white women as a whole. And throughout history, if you do some research, it's always been a movement to just step on the backs of Black women for white women to leverage themselves up in society. So I'm so excited for this one. Then I picked up at my school library Black Swans by Babitz. So trendy right now. I am excited for this read, honestly. I wasn't aware that Babitz is actually a real person when I picked this book up, but I did a little research. So she's real. She's a Hollywood girl, LA girl back in like the 1980s, I think. And it's just a collection of stories of the things that she's learned in that scene, from sex, money, drugs, relationships, drama. So that's my niche. I like that. So I'm excited. Then I went to a secondhand bookshop in Philly and got the book Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison. It's Toni Morrison. Not much to be said. She's just amazing. And Sula really blew me away, so I want to get into a lot more Toni Morrison. And then I was so excited, y'all, when I found this read. I also picked up this at the secondhand bookstore. It is the Unabridged Journals of Sylvia Plath. I had this book in my cart for like a while, and I've been wanting to get around to it because people speak extremely highly of this book. Sylvia's writings and her journals just speak to the soul and just encompass the struggle and the perseverance of women that struggle with mental illnesses. And I am definitely a girly that struggles with that. So I am so thrilled to start getting into this. I don't think it's one of those books that I'm gonna just like read until I'm done to the end. I think it's gonna be one of those books where I just like pick it up here and there throughout my other readings. So yeah, she's a big one, but I'm excited. And then I also got White Nights by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I think that's how you say his name. Classic writer, classic story. A lot of people like it. I started reading it a couple of days ago because I wanted to fit it into my May reads, but I was not in a setting where that was possible. It was very noisy. There was a lot going around. I think this book is a book that will have to be read in quiet. It's just full of dialogue from what I read so far and hard to track. They're very big pieces of dialogue and I need to be in a space where I can completely focus. So I'll be picking this up later, but I've heard really good things. And then I went to another secondhand bookshop like Wednesday and I picked up Annabel by Kathleen Winter. It's a story about a person who is bi gender. So they are both male and female, and they grow up being raised by their family as a male, but then they end up entering into a space where that community treats them more as a female. And they're just trying to understand themselves and their own identity and what they want to be and what they feel. I think this is a really interesting story, so high hopes for this one. I've heard good things from what I read on Goodreads. And then I picked up The Sum of Our Days by Isabel Allende. I am currently reading this right now actually, and her writing is just blowing me away. Her prose is absolutely beautiful, and it's a memoir about her family and her family life as a whole after the tragic event of her losing her daughter. I'm absolutely loving it so far, and the cover is just beautiful. And then the last book that I bought is All Four by Miranda July. It's kind of like a coming of age for a middle-aged woman, which I think is a really cool concept. It's about a woman that is basically trying to rediscover herself and her identity and where she fits into this world. And it has a bit of a spicy romance thing with this guy she meets. I got this recommended by Kat's Fields Notes on YouTube, and she doesn't miss with her recommendations, so I have high hopes for this one. And those were all the books that I have bought and read in the month of May. We're quickly rolling into June, and I think June is going to be a really good reading month, considering all the beautiful books that I have bought and am excited to read. But I do not doubt that I will buy more and sneak some into there. So that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for coming here and just conversing with me about books and letting me geek out while you listen. So I hope I see you soon again. I hope you stick around for more videos, and yeah. See ya.